What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tapped In Indy Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined by my co-host, Mr. Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you doing today, my friend?
Listen, this triple header weekends, they're rough on this old body. I couldn't even imagine being a wrestler and doing like 3 shows in a week because just going to 3 shows in a weekend sometimes wears me out.
Yes, I am not used. We've been on Christmas break. Here's the school, and I have gotten in the bed after midnight 3 nights in a row, and I don't ever want to do that again. And we were out late last night at AWE. Before we get into that, fans, we've been talking about this behind the scenes. I don't know if we've talked about it actually on the show, but this is a big week for us because we are making some major changes to the show. If you're watching this on YouTube, we are going to talk about some of the top stories in independent wrestling. We're going to talk about some AEW. But if you're looking for the Indy Rewind and Making the Drives, that is now going to be solely on Patreon. It is going to be absolutely free. Patreon.com/tapdownpod. It's a free show. All you have to do is sign up, create an account for Patreon. You can watch this show every week. You can watch the video there. Again, 100% free. And so if you're somebody and you're just kind of wanting the highlights and the main stories of Georgia indie wrestling, boom, this YouTube show is the way for you. And if you are somebody who's like, well, I'd like to know what happened at SCA, or I'd like to know what happened at Bullpen, or I'd like to know more details about that particular show, boom, that Patreon show is going to be for you. And we also, while we're at it, we want to thank all of our paying patrons. I've recorded about 3 things that I got to send to Nick. Including, I didn't even tell you this on the way home last night. I recorded what I like to call taking the pencil, where I looked at the AWE show of the year card. It says, here's what I would change, here's what I would tweak. So anyway, thanks for everybody's support. It's been a great year. We're almost to the finish of year 1 with this show, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and this was a long time coming with this as far as the restructuring goes, moving it over. So yeah, the Indy Rewind, Making the Drives will be Patreon. Look, and again, we wanted to make sure we were. I posted about it on the on Facebook the other day. So it's out there. It was a known thing, but like I said, we wanted to keep it free. We did not want to charge for that, but we were like, hey, where can we put this? Because we think the people that want to hear that, they'll go find it at Patreon, and Patreon.com. They'll get free account. We're not charging for that. But we are upping our game a little bit here on the paid stuff, being a paid member. You had a great idea. I'm not going to get into that today, but you had a great idea about even adding value to that $25 level.
Yeah.
Some content that's you're going to be able to buy episodes. That's a new feature for Patreon. So there's going to be episodes like, hey, I don't want to be a $25 member, but I want to see this episode.
Yeah.
Pay $3, whatever, just buy that episode, and you could do that. But all of that, so you got to start with the free account. So that's kind of why we thought it would be a great way to get your foot in the door. Have a show that's exclusive to the free account. And there's lots of other stuff we put up there for free. The Phil Stamper, upcoming India calendars on there for free, and lots of other little things that we put on there for free. So I think it's of a value because every episode eventually is there for free. You can send it to your Apple Podcast, your Spotify, all that kind of stuff. So absolutely, I think the value's there.
Yeah, I would say this makes us want to put a lot more content on Patreon, even more free content. And so you could join Patreon today, never become a paid member, and you're going to get I think the best free value of on professional wrestling. Let's dive in. Saturday night was the big year-ending pay-per-view, AEW World's End. Mark Whitman and I watch this. We get together. We watch all the AEW pay-per-views, starting with 0 Hour. Just want to talk about a couple things. If you've not been following the Toni Storm angle, it is tremendous. She has come back in like in her original character, like almost like she's got amnesia, like she's a rookie starting out, and she's excited to be there. And it is she is one of the most entertaining wrestlers in all of professional wrestling right now.
Listen, I enjoyed the old gimmick. I really did. I
Yeah.
thought it was really because I love different than
Yes.
Angle's character story. So, and I thought, like, why does she stand out so much? Because she was so different than everything else they were putting out there. I did think she stood out on the show. So I've been a fan of both. Now, obviously, I like this other version of her in WWE's universe. I liked it, but I like the twist that they've added to it. Like
Yes.
to it, so it's even like, hey, she's back to her old gimmick, kind of. Like
Yes.
it's not exact, but it's a
Right.
twist on it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of hers. Have been for a long time, and I hope this is even like the next thing to just because there was a level. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
was there a point though that you thought there was only so far she could go with that other character, the timeless character?
I think for the time being, yes. But the thing now is now if you want to, you can go back to that and explore some different things.
What if she gets a
Uh,
bump on the head again and boom, and then she's like back to timeless tone? Yeah, exactly.
right. So I think now we're getting into a generation of wrestlers who grew up on Chris Jericho, who was the king of reinvention. And so that's been one of their main uh uh not factors, main influences on a lot of these young wrestlers. So the more you can learn to reinvent yourself, try new things, uh and Tony Storm has certainly shown she's willing to kind of go out on a limb and bet on herself, and it was good. One of the other matches on 0 Hour was just a great old school match. Jeff Jarrett and QT Marshall um, just put on good old fashioned wrestling match.
This probably was my favorite. Everybody, like knew probably why, just because I'm, you know, because of the history there. Like I'm, they're two of my favorite performers. Period.
Yeah,
And like I said, I do like I love entertaining wrestling, and that's kind of what this was. And it was very, like you said, an old school. We're not going out there and flipping and diving and crazy stuff in the sense of the word. They put on a good old fashioned match, and so I knew I would enjoy it when they announced it. And I'm eager to see. Jeff says he's got a big announcement this week.
yes,
We'll see what that is. I hope it's not, like, hey, I'm hanging it up. It's time, that kind of thing. But if it does, I mean, what a career. I mean, so I can't, I don't fault him for it. But yeah, I hope that's not what it is.
right. He's in such tremendous shape, and I asked Mark while we're watching. I said, "Is there anybody you and I have changed our opinion more about than Jeff Jarrett?" And yeah, he's just been such a great. He was a heel that you did not like.
Mm-hmm.
He was the old school. He didn't try to be cool. He was just like, God, I hate this guy. And you're like, well, that's how you're supposed to feel about him. So it's been nice the last couple of years to see him kind of get his flowers and stuff. I did not think there was a bad match on this card. The Continental Classic matches, Osprey and Fletcher was great. Osprey fans, if you hadn't seen, he gets a couple of gushers here and comes out. Okada and Ricochet was really good. I felt like Okada and Ricochet, they kind of dialed it back a little bit. It was a good match, but it's like, hey, we're gonna save that maybe for another time. Um, but Osprey came out for the finals. He did the Spirit of 76, tape around the head, didn't even clean up. Had all his face is covered in dried blood, his whole body's covered in dried blood. And he and Okada had it was a different kind of match because of that injury. I thought it was great, greatly entertaining. Mariah May and Thunder Rosa had the Tijuana street fight. That was one of those matches where it just was what it was. It was a car crash that didn't overstay its welcome. MJF and Adam Cole had an entertaining match, but Mark and I are definitely under agreement. We got to get these two guys away from each other. This needs to be over. MGF needs to do his thing, and Adam Cole needs to do his thing. I'm a huge fan of Takeshita. That guy could be, if he was the villain in the new Karate Kid movie coming out, it wouldn't surprise me at all. He's got star written all over him.
Yeah, it's I'm ready for him. I know this sounds weird to move beyond Powerhouse Hobbs. Like I'm ready for him to take, where he's getting who's the next person for that championship, like, right? Like
Right.
is it a Ricochet, or is it somebody? I need elevation. No disrespect to Powerhouse Hobbs, but I'm ready to like shoot that title up there. I kind of want that elevation.
One of the big stories of the night was Kenny Omega returned to present the Continental title to Okada after he won that final match against Ospreay. He got obviously a good reaction, and you could definitely feel the tension in the ring between he and Okada. Uh, and I would say, would there be? I would say those Okada Omega matches were such a catalyst for the creation of AEW.
Yeah, and here's my actual question to you though: are we rushing to get to this match just to make sure we get it? Like with Kenny's health, that or is it like, hey, are you medically cleared? Let's get Okada now, because we can't say that in 6 months to a year we're going to have this match.
Well, I think Omega, from what I've heard, he's supposed to wrestle this week at
Mm-hmm.
Wrestle Kingdom. I think they're going to see how he is. I think they're going to get him cleared, have those first couple of matches, and I think they're going to save he and Okada in North America for All In or All Out. I mean, they're going to save it for one of their big shows, but I do think we're going to get that match before the end of 2025.
Yeah. We need
Uh,
it. We need it sooner, just to make sure we get it in the ring. I know that sounds terrible. I think there. Do you get worried at this point of like, what does he have left in the tank, and as far as the injuries and the illnesses, and we got to make it happen. So
that's right. That's right. John Moxley retained the AW World Championship in an entertaining match. That really, the ending of it, you had Rated FTR coming out to set up the 6-man match for Dynamite on Wednesday, which that kind of shows you how used to be your weekly TV set up a pay-per-view,
mm-hmm.
but with the streaming war now, they use that closing angle to set up, the mother of all simulcasts, as they're calling it, for Wednesday night.
Yeah. And we're gonna have on tomorrow's episode. I've already seen, like, obviously we've started the notes and everything, and there's going to be another pretty good conversation where we dive into like the world as we know it changes next week or this week. I guess by the
Yes.
time we have those conversations, with Raw going to Netflix, Max simulcast on Max changes a lot. So there's going to be a big viewership conversation that we're going to have on tomorrow's Tapped Out episode.
Yeah, in a sense, every week is literally a pay-per-view. You got to pay to see it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I enjoyed World's End. I know some people, I feel like there's a whole wrestling journalistic industry on predicting the death of AEW. I certainly don't want them to go away. This was an entertaining pay-per-view, and I think they're going to have a good year. They got the new rights deal, so we'll see what happens. Speaking of rights deals, we have rights deals with great promotions, and one of those promotions is Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, who we joined several weeks ago to film some this or that's, and we got a great one with somebody you don't see on camera often, and that's Mr. Scott Barnett. So let's go to this week's this or that.
Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of This or That on the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast. I am joined now by a man who's not in the ring. He is behind the scenes, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, the Monday Nightmares, used to be wrestling at Southern. Scott Barnett,
That's
the
me.
man, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
Scott, how you doing, man? You are You are I'm trying to get my phone going here. You're one of the hardest working men in show business.
Well, I appreciate that. I do like James Brown.
Now this. So sorry. The
technical
now
difficulties.
this is like a family affair. Like your wife helps out, your kids are here.
Yep.
So that's really cool to see. So here we go.
I couldn't do it if it wasn't for my wife and kids.
See, there you go, buttering them up. Here we go. Now, I haven't seen. Would you rather wear sneakers or sandals?
Sneakers.
Are you a Crocs guy? Do you wear Crocs?
No.
I have never worn Crocs in my life. People try to buy me the new Batmobile Crocs, and I said, no, please don't do that. Now, I know you are also, because of all the businesses you're in, you're writing a lot. Pen or pencil?
Pencil.
Pencil, really?
Pencil, yes.
If
I misspell something, I need to erase it. You can't do that with a pen.
I got you. Would you rather be, I've only seen you at these big events. Would you rather be at a big party or a small gathering?
A small gathering.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? That really doesn't surprise me.
People, like when I'm around you guys and people around here, like I talk a lot.
Yeah.
But at home, I don't talk a lot.
Really?
I'm kind of a quiet guy.
So when you got your family, would you rather cook at home or take them out to eat?
Cook at home.
Cook at home. Hey,
my wife's a good cook.
So, hey, Thanksgiving's coming up. What's the one, other than turkey and all that, what's the one dish that you asked your wife to make for Thanksgiving?
Well, she never makes it, but I got to give my Aunt Brenda a shout out because she makes this thing called a chocolate pie. It's got like that meringue stuff on it.
Yes.
She makes me one that I can take home with me.
Oh, yeah.
That I don't have to share with anybody else. So, Aunt Brenda, thank you.
Aunt Brenda, 721 Wesleyan Drive. You can mail it. It'll be fine. Yeah. We're at shows like this a lot of time where, the different breweries, they got different food. Would you rather have fries or onion rings?
Fries all day long.
Fries all day longs. Let's get into movies real quick. Would you rather watch a horror movie or a romance movie?
Romance. I'm not much on horror.
Me neither. Horror. I don't like being scared.
I don't either. And blood and guts aren't that big of a deal, but like creepy stuff. I'm not a creepy stuff guy.
100%. All right, last question. Fishing or hunting?
Hunting.
What do you normally do? You did deer hunt or do you do other stuff?
I don't do any hunting anymore, but if I had to pick those two, because I don't like taking fish off of hook.
Oh, yes.
So, I don't.
You ever been deep sea fishing?
I have, but I hooked a bull shark, and it took like an hour to get it up.
Yeah,
and I was like, that was dumb.
Okay,
and it just took too long, and just I don't know. I'd rather just watch wrestling. Than hunt or fish.
Scott, tell everybody where they can follow the Nightmare shows, the Turnbuckle shows, and just support you guys on social media.
Yeah, social media, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. You can search it out on Instagram, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. The Monday Nightmare shows, we have moved over to South Main Brewing now, and we're out there. We're there on the third Mondays of every month. They've been a great host and are happy to have me, or happy to have us, and we're just happy to be in partnership with them.
And they have been running a ton of shows this year. The rumor is 2025 is going to be lit for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling.
Y'all better get ready.
And behind it all, Scott Barnett. Hey, come out, and maybe we'll see you at the matches.
See you then.
One of the things that I really appreciate about Scott is Scott is always working so hard, but he never seems frazzled, and I've never seen him like Scott is a guy like I would never want to see him angry. And so I'm glad that he kind of keeps a very calm demeanor.
Yeah, he's the best. I always tell everybody he's one of the best guys around, man. So if you ever have a chance, you're at a Turnbuckle show and you see him, give him a pat on the back and give him a shake, a handshake, because he does a lot of work. So,
fans, we're going to get into some stories now, and it's the last show of the year. These are some of the biggest stories for all of 2024. Like, some of the news that is broken in the last 5 days. again, some of the biggest stories, starting off with the announcement just a few short days ago that IWE Intense Wrestling Entertainment in Augusta has announced that they are taking the year 2025 off, will not be running any shows. They're going to be restructuring. This kind of came out of nowhere the other day, Nick.
It was a bombshell. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like, it's like we did a whole, we did a Patreon on this, so you would have heard a lot of this conversation if you were a Patreon member. Let's see, this show drops on Wednesday, so it would have been almost a week ago at this point, right?
Yes.
That Patreon drop. So you would have had a lot of this information a week ago, essentially. It just out of left field completely.
I had somebody come up to me last night at the show, says, "Hey, what did you guys think of IWE?" I said, "We recorded an hour about it. You got to be a patron." And so, like, that's what I'm saying. When there's breaking news, we took a really deep. I mean, like you said, we talked almost an hour about the implications of that, the reasons behind it. I think what we just want to cover here is, IWE is someone we have talked about a lot. Their shows are some that I've gone to and was hoping to go to their War Game show January the 11th. Had a work thing come up, so I wasn't going to be able to do that. But I think the big shocking thing is they were heading into a show that they had been building to for a year. Like, everything in the promotion was building to this War Games rematch, the 2 rings and all of that. And just, you're never going to get the payoff for that big angle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just, that's the biggest hole, right? That's the biggest hole. Like, it's just no closure to it. There's no still, it's going to be, that's going to be the toughest part to swallow, I guess, on a lot of it. And there's lots of other, like I said, stuff that we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Right.
But listen, this was your, hey, why is it such a big deal? I mean, they were literally voted in the Georgia Wrestling History Awards the last 2 years as Promotion of the Year. Say whatever you want about them, that, as far as the award, whatever, blah blah blah, whatever. That is your current reigning, defending Promotion of the Year. And we talked a little bit about it, and I'll steal some of what I put in the Patreon is they didn't make it out of 2025 or 2024. They didn't make it into 2025. It's like, was it semantics of 4 days? Sure, but they didn't.
Right.
I mean, so that's why it's a big, huge deal that they're going away, because it does create that, and then if you want to hear the deeper parts of our thought of what holes does that leave, how does that affect everybody, that's in the Patreon, man. That's why you pay to be a Patreon members, because you can hear how deep 55 minutes, folks, 55 minutes we talked about this, and but like here we want to make sure that we understand, like, the Georgia indie scene realizes, like, this is it was a big deal out of nowhere.
Yes. Another huge story that really IWE shutting down was a bad surprise. This was a good surprise, and it was the return of Bryce Cannon at Coastal Empire Wrestling in Savannah on Saturday night. I believe there was a battle royal going on. I've seen some fan video of Bryce Cannon getting in the ring and getting physically involved, and it was a sight to behold.
That's a return.
Yes.
That's when you book a return. Now, listen, I know there's an asterisk. He's not quite ready.
Yeah.
He's not fully, back, but he's back enough that those fan cams that we got, that video, my response was, that girl was wild, man. She was just screaming her head off. Like I said, like, bookers, promoters, whatever, go watch that. And I'm like, if you book a return, if you have a return, that's what you hope for.
Yes.
Like, that's the response you want. I mean, literally stepped out to where he could be seen, and you could hear people screaming, like, "Oh my God, it's Bryce Cannon!" And then, bah! And they're going crazy. Like, that's what you want.
The reaction when he got up from the commentary table and started walking toward the ring, you can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel that pop. And as the crowd starts recognizing, and like he's kind of behind a section, and when they start realizing what's going on and turning, they lost their minds. And this is a young man. Did we talk about in the first 2 or 3 months of the show? Was there anybody we talked about more than Bryce Cannon?
The hot take that that I put out there that was like, at the pace, there's one guy that I made a case for last night about it, but the original stance I had was at the pace he was on, dude, I didn't think it was close. Like, this guy was clearly off to the races to be Wrestler of the Year, and we were in March, and we were saying that. Like, it's not even close at that point. And we were like, hey, does he have a case and he only wrestled 3 months? Like, clearly we're joking. You can't win it with 3 months, etc., whatever. But we can get into that Carly Bravo debate, right? That was the, like, hey, doesn't qualify, he's a signed talent, etc., all that, whatever. That's a different story. Like, might be if Bryce Cannon had stayed on the pace he was on, and there's a lot of ifs here, right? If, ands, buts, and what's, whatever. But if Bryce Cannon had stayed at the pace he was on, and Carly, think about the race we would have had if Carly Bravo had come on and had the run. Here's the problem. There's no way we make it out of 2024 with those two on that pace where they don't wrestle at some point.
Yeah, the question would have been, what promotion was going to get that match? Would that have been your show of the year main event?
Could have been.
Maybe 2025.
Yeah, there's so many. I wanted to, maybe there's a Patreon. This is a great idea. I think there's a Patreon where we book Bryce Cannon's 2024 if he's not injured.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously you don't ever, I hope, Bryce, if you're listening to this, you hear what I'm saying. You don't ever wish injury on anybody, especially when he got injured. But I have never had confidence in somebody coming back and being 10 times better than they already were. And so my statement to Georgia Wrestling is, who's going to take wrestler? Like, he knows he was going to be Wrestler of the Year. He knows. And he's hungry. And that is what you like to see. And the crowd's hungry for him too. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think 2025 is going to be a really good year. And I'm like, I walked up to Carly Bravo and I'm like, I told him that he came back and was like, really, the reason I told him is like, I cannot wait for this match.
Yes.
Like, this is a match I'm looking for. And the challenge goes out to the promoters. Does it Coastal Empire get that match? Does AWE get that match? Who gets that match? Because that's the match I'm already excited for in 2025.
Yes. Yeah, it's exciting. Somebody else who made a return, he's been around, but he actually made a return to in-ring action last night. And it is Matt Griffin. And the question in our notes is, Nick, is Matt Griffin, is he a deathmatch god?
Ask him. He'll tell you he is. I will tell you that. Hey, before we get into that, I do want to shout out real quick. Kudos. Nathan Mowry has put something together pretty unique and pretty special. And I'll tell you why. Like, a lot of people are going to go, hey, you're going to, yes, let me finish before, like, he's done a very, like, it was a very successful series with this Blood and Honey Deathmatch series that he's put on at Monk's Meadery. And the reason I say that is that, they were very clear with expectations, what they were wanting to do. They clearly hit those numbers that the measurables. Everybody, all parties involved were happy. Folks, that's what we always talk about. Get with your partner, your venue, your whatever, and like, hey, this is what we want to do, and know what's a success and what don't get. I go like, well, I guess we did okay. Like, no, you should know we hit our measurables. We did what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And what I like about it too was one thing that the first show, did it have some hiccups? Yes. But they fixed a lot of those in the second show and in the third show. And by the way, you want to know I'm really excited about? They had their crowd the first show.
Mhm.
It was like, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to see what happens. But then the second show was bigger and the third show was bigger. So
Yes.
it was like, hey, we have talked about this on a on multiple shows where we're like, it's not just about the number, it's the trend.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of our proving our point. Like, why are we so excited about a promotion that drew, and look, I wasn't there. I'm going off of, secondhand information, 85, 90 people, something like that. 80, 90 people. Why am I excited about that? Because the first show was lower, second show was higher, third show was higher, so like, hey, we see the trend, and that's what we always come back to. So kudos and tip our cap. I wanted to do that out of the gate. Nathan Mowry, great job. Look, Deathmatch in Atlanta, right? Well, Matt Griffin wasn't happening. Deathmatch was back in Atlanta. So that's kind of how we get to there. And how about, the kingpin of Georgia wrestling. He wrestles, CJ Lawler. It was like CJ Lawler's first match in like a year.
Uh-huh.
And it was Matt Griffin's first ever death, right? And we always have this, and it's a saying that's really hard for me at times to say, because in deathmatch wrestling, I guess there really isn't. You can't cheat to win, right? I mean,
right.
So you do, as much as it pains you at times, got to give Matt Griffin credit. He walks out with a W. He has in his first ever deathmatch against a guy like CJ Lawler. He is. The problem when people that make a lot of, that talk a lot, is then when they deliver, you kind of have to just kind of eat that. Like, all right, I mean, look, like it or not, he won.
Yeah, and we're starting to see pictures of this match. I don't know if there's going to be video. I'm not a big death match guy. That's one I want to go watch because I think half of Georgia, like, there's just something intriguing about this. We want to see Matt Griffin in a death match, and there was only one place you could see it last night, and he got the win. I don't want to get sidetracked here. So 2 shows last night, about 20 minutes from each other there in the Atlanta metro area, and both drew healthy crowds, 80 plus, I'd say, but both drew 80 plus. And both, it seems like both crowds at AWE and at the deathmatch show, both very enthusiastic crowds.
Yeah, I mean, and for different styles, different shows, and I guess yeah. I mean, we'll cover the other show here in a second. A little more, but like again, it's I do want to tell you what I did like about Nathan's deathmatch. Yeah, he was in with Dominic Stuckey.
Yeah.
So they did a 3 stages of hell match, and the reason and you'll see why I'm coming back over in a minute.
Yeah.
So Dominic Stuckey won because they had a pure wrestling phase of the match, and Dominic Stuckey, that's his bag. So he picks up the win. Well, he loses the submission and he loses the deathmatch piece or whatever. The reason I really wanted to get to this is that's where Matt Griffin gets his. The bundle of light tubes, boom. There's a plunger involved. There's all of this. He had a night, and those are the pictures I do want to get out there on social media. And I know some of them have already come out. So on one hand, Matt Griffin wins, his match, but the question is, does he win the night because he walks away, in the shape he was in? So that would be a good Matt Griffin question. You might be the deathmatch god because you won your match. Did you win a battle or did you win the war? That would be the question to ask yourself.
Yes. And kudos to Dominic Stuckey, who's a young guy we've been following, who's had a very good year in Georgia wrestling, and again, not your typical deathmatch guy, but putting himself out there and having, by all accounts, a great match here with Nathan Mowry.
Yeah. Does it seem like there's a thing out here now where there's more of these, like, guys we just think are traditional wrestlers? They just have this itch to do this. Because here's my excitement for the future for Nathan and the Blood Honey Deathmatch series. What if, like, I just happen to know, and I don't want to reveal names. I happen to know of like a lot of technical wrestlers in Georgia, the guys that we think are like some of the best technical wrestlers in Georgia.
Yeah,
that are big deathmatch wrestling fans, and I'm like, what if we get more of how shocked would you be if at the next Blood and Honey series, and I'm picking random names out of a hat, Kyle Matthews is on the show?
Holy cow!
Something like that, like, because they just want to do one. Like, yeah. I think in Nathan's connections, I think that's a possibility.
Well, and I think, or in this region, deathmatch wrestling has been kind of like this far off thing, and now it's here. Now it's in our backyard. And so if you are a wrestler and there's been some curiosity, and now you know you could do it with people you trust,
correct,
people you know, then why, if that's an itch you've been wanting to scratch, now's the time to do it.
I mean, this season alone, Dominic Stuckey, Sunny Days is, done. I mean, like, Matt Griffin's been, I'm like, dude, this is good. I think that's the mystique of, like, if these guys buy in and they get involved and they're, I just think it's a unique opportunity. Again, look, people are wanting to put, like, I openly tell people, and I've said this to Nate, like, I'm not the biggest deathmatch guy, but I appreciate the fact there's a market for it and there's an untapped market in Atlanta for it. But the unique part of that is seeing people that I think putting people on a poster that you were like, I never thought I'd see the day.
Right.
Like we expected, we didn't see it, but we expected, like, hey, are we going to see Cruel on a poster? Are we going to see this guy on a poster? But, like, what about, like I said, Kyle Matthews or Adam Priest, or, like, these guys start popping up on these deathmatch, but you'll be like, wait a minute, what? I won't lie, like, literally Matt Griffin on the poster, like, we almost, like, in the car, I'm trying to figure out, like, can I leave here, drive over there, catch that match, and get back and catch the Carly, Trevor Lee match? Like, that was literally in my head. Like, yeah, they almost had me doing, like, shooting between 20 miles of traffic to get between the two shows. But I will tell you, you start slapping Kyle Matthews and Adam Priest and, just insert a bunch of other names on this poster. Okay, I got to free up a Sunday. I got to get down there.
Yeah, here's my question though, and I'm not trying to be a party pooper. Here's a question. We have talked behind the scenes, I think on Patreon and other places, or maybe just in the car, about recent developments with the Georgia Athletic Commission. All it takes, they're doing these death matches as, I definitely feel like there's a perception of deathmatch wrestling from people outside of wrestling that don't know anything about it. All it would take is one thing going wrong, and I'm curious what effect that would have on Georgia wrestling. But right now they're doing things the right way. We're just in this weird season with the powers that be and whatever. But Nathan, I need to see video of this. I need to see Matt Griffin get hit with a bundle of light tubes. And I don't say that very often.
No, it's definitely something you need to see. I think everybody needs to see this. This needs to be a public YouTube thing.
Yes. There were, you mentioned right off the bat, triple header weekend for you. Saturday night you were at Southern Honor, and Southern Fried ran hot on a cold winter night.
Southern Fried, here's the funny thing, and again, things that you say, like, hey, I'm going to say this because this is true. The card was building as it went along, and you're like, it's a pretty good show. It's a good show. It's a good show. It's a good show, But what Southern Fried, like we have said for years, Southern Fried's strength is the storyline behind, the stories that they tell. And they are so good about like literally like a breadcrumb in the second match, something in the fourth match. Like they're laying the story out for you. And sometimes you don't even realize it.
Right.
Until you get the moment that they really were building to. And it's people ask me all the time, like, we have said, like, this is really pulling our curtain back a little bit. When we're talking to promotion, like, hey, what's your A story? What's your B story? Kind of what's the most important things to cover? It's really hard to cover everything. Like, as you could tell, like the whole way we've restructured the entire podcast, like as far as how we're doing the shows now. This is why. Like, because I tried to tell somebody, like, your A story alone can sell tickets if it's done correctly.
Yes.
The B story absolutely helps. Like, if you've got two stories going on, but you're going to have one story that's probably selling your tickets. Your first, second, and third matches, they mean a lot. I said this to somebody in the back. They mean a lot to your booker, but they don't necessarily mean a lot to the fans that bought your tickets sitting out there.
Right.
They're setting stuff up for way down the road, and they matter in that sense, but that's not what sold your ticket. No offense to the guys working the first, second, third. Now, sometimes you do things like they did here, where the second match was, Judias and Pat Roach because it was setting a piece. But when they got to the end of their show, I can't. One of the biggest heels in that company for the last couple of years was Bobby Moore, and this over the stretch of essentially 2 shows. I know it's been longer, but essentially in 2 shows, they flipped the switch to him being one of the. He was one of the most over guys. He walked out and the crowd just went crazy.
Yes.
For the main event, he was challenging Hunter James for that Classics championship. They went bananas. So it's like, I always ask people, like, it's chicken or the egg here. And I want to ask you this. Do they hate Hunter James to the point that they loved Bobby Moore? Do they love Todd Sexton and the Sexton a lot, that they've been reformed, that they love him so much that they hate? Like but the beauty of it is I feel like it's a combination and they've pulled off both simultaneously. And that's how you reach it. It's not one guy that's this way or that. You took one guy and flipped him and elevated him as one of your top baby faces. And you got Hunter James and doing, with the Crusade and that group, and you shot them to the forefront of the Ultimate Heel, so they peaked at the same time. That's why you got the reaction you got at the end of that show.
We, Saturday, Mark and I, leading up to watching the AEW pay-per-view, we're watching some old Saturday Night's Main Event, and one of the best angles of the 80s was the Mega Powers. And the way that happened, you had Randy Savage, who had been a heel, and they put him on Saturday Night's Main Event against the Honky Tonk Man. Typically, the heel comes out first. Typically, the champion comes out last. Well, they made a big deal about Honky Tonk Man demanding to come out first. So here comes Honky Tonk Man. And then Macho Man comes out. Now, Macho Man didn't change anything about how he wrestled, but because everybody hated the Honky Tonk Man, we're going to cheer for Randy Savage. Even though he's, choking and punching, we're going to cheer for Randy Savage because we hate the Honky Tonk Man. And it beautifully set up Hogan and Savage coming. Hogan makes the save. So that's one of the ways you turn a guy, is you have someone who is so hated that when you bring in a guy that the fans don't really like, they don't necessarily hate him, but it's sure like, oh, well, we hate this guy so much. We love this guy now. So it is a tale as old as time, and that's the way to do it. And what do you know? Todd Sexton knows what he's doing.
Look, and not only that, by the way, there's a huge thing to be said for those two put on a fantastic match. And I wanted to go out of my way, and I don't. How often we do not do this, and we probably should. Hunter James is we have praised that little enough that I'm like, he gets it. Everybody knows we think he's good. Can't stand the kid.
Yes,
but we acknowledge the talent.
That's right.
After that match was over, I was like, Bobby Moore, like, I was stunned. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. Like, I was like, Bobby Moore, I did not know you still had that in you. And because he absolutely went out there and nailed it. he hung with that kid, and he actually taught that kid, a few lessons along the way. So I wanted to tip my cap to Bobby Moore, on air to say, like, dude, that was an outstanding match. I really was, like, surprised in a good way by what I saw in the match alone, and I felt like he deserved a little bit of his flowers for that.
Yeah, this is definitely one when it goes up on YouTube that I want to watch. But I want to watch the whole show because you really had trouble putting into words this show closing angle that did what you're supposed to do. You and I are both comic book readers, and the goal of a good comic book is to get you to buy another comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal of a good wrestling show should be to get you to pay to see another wrestling show, and nobody did that better than Southern Fried on Saturday night.
No, they had to obviously, like, they put on the spectacular match, but of course the heels, they're not going to let it in clean, and then but there's this massive involvement with the Crusade, and then the Sexton Lions, Shoot Eyes, but they're all in there. They gave you enough, like they got enough of them that you're like, oh, they got their hand, but then they escaped. Isn't that what happens in comic books? You just brought it up. Like, that's what typically happens in comic books. The hero gets their hands on them, and sometimes they even catch them and they send them to jail, but they escape.
Right.
And then it's like, oh, and it's usually the heel at the end of, like, I'll be back, or I'll, and it's, but that's it. Like, you need that. Then what? Like, what's next? Like, how do we, you cannot. There is a show. Like, you have the big blow off, the pay-per-view, the PLE, the big show of the year, whatever. Yes, you want to. I think you got to do one of two things. You either send them home happy, or you just go nuclear heat and hand them home so mad that they want. You can't do both. I think that's what we're going with. You cannot do both. Correct.
And Southern Fried has already, they've set up their next show, 6-on-6, which you don't see that very often, and everybody's wanting to see how this is gonna end up. I believe they said January 18th. Is that the right date?
Correct, January 18th, right there in Monroe. Yep.
Well, I will be looking at the calendar and seeing where I'm going to be on January the 18th. I know where I was at last night. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, show of the year 8. Not really a bad match on this card. But a little bit, that was definitely their largest crowd of the year. I'd say definitely, between 80 and 100 folks. They were into it. A lot of kids there, which was kind of surprising. This is not a family-friendly show. And they were into all of it, and they loved the ending, and the ending at show of the year was the opposite of what happened at Southern Fried.
I'll get there. Massive credit to, like you said, the matches. They were all really good. They all delivered. We got to see, the Jake's Ministry run roughshod. They got all the, they won their tag titles. They won, all that like, you built and built and built to the point. And I think that's, like you said, when we got to the end, I felt like, here, let's start with this. Cause we asked ourselves, so I'm prefacing what I'm about to say with, were we wrong?
Yeah.
In what we thought. And here's why we questioned ourselves. So we're not saying we are right. Our opinion is the most important. The show was great. Like, literally, we thought at the end of the show, we were like, dude, that was a really good show. It was delivered, whatever.
Right.
The only question mark we had was the last, 5 minutes maybe?
Yes.
That we were like, you built the heat for the tag team titles. You took, the Jake's Ministry takes them. Kenway gets robbed in a First Blood match. So the hierarchy literally has been beaten in all of their matches. But pause button. I'm going to come back to those. Trevor Lee, Carly Bravo was everything we thought it would be, and then more. Absolutely. That's, there's a whole conversation about Carly Bravo and what he's done in Georgia that we're not going to have time for right now. Like, we just don't.
Correct.
But he knows what we think. I've said it to him personally, and I, stand by that. That conversation's coming sooner than later.
Yeah.
Unpause. The hierarchy post, thing, they basically run off the Jake's ministry, but leave Donald Jakes in the ring. They get their hands on him and they splash it. The commentator Rob, whether he splashes him, he's an honorary hierarchy member if you're not sure. And then, it's like the question was, if you were going for heat, did you just kill the heat? Did you pour Hennessy on it? I mean, literally, that was like you got your hands on Donald Jakes. So, like and look again, we're saying we could be wrong because the crowd they were going crazy, they loved it, whatever. But the question was, but then what are we coming back for? Is it just to get our tag titles back? Let me ask you this, and this is the question. And listen, and if somebody can answer this question, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. We're not trying to be it's a legit question. If you were a fan, would you care more that they got their titles back, or would you care that they had gotten their hands on Donald Jakes? I think the answer to that is that you would rather they got their hand on Donald Jakes and did what they did to him last night. So if the blow-offs to get the titles back, I don't think they matter that much. Honestly, and I would have moved in away from them having the tag titles to begin with, so it was the right move to get them off of them anyway.
It's the equivalent. The metaphor I used was, it would be like in Star Wars when Ben Kenobi meets Luke Skywalker. Ben Kenobi said, "Hey, Darth Vader's your father, right?" Like within that first, hour of the first Star Wars movie, you already know that Darth Vader is Luke's dad. And then you're going through the rest of the movie, you're like, well, I kind of know the big thing we already know. Again, it wasn't the way it was executed, and I actually did a Patreon on this last night that we'll post soon. The execution of it was fine. The way they did it was fine. It was the timing of it. This, like I said, they shouldn't have got their hand. He should have escaped for a year. And then at show of the year 9, December 2025, that when you build it and you build it and you build it, and then they get their hands on him.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like it's like you gave me dessert before I even got my salad.
Kind of, yeah. And that's like I said, but we want to be fair. Like I said, from top to bottom, the show was, boom, it delivered. It was a really good show. I think our only nitpick, and that's kind of what we're literally like, hey, we're just two podcasters. That's kind of what we do. Is that was the only thing that was puzzling, is like, why do that there? But then again, like I said, their fans were happy, it seemed like, so maybe we're absolutely wrong, and that is 100% possible.
I went to a Southern State show, I went to an AWE show, then I went last night. So I've been to 3 of their shows in their history. I feel like, though, last night, the vibe,
correct,
that's what they want.
Yes.
Whether they draw 40 people, 50 people, 80 people, 300 people, that's the vibe. That was, I feel like I can now say I've been to an AWE show. That's what they're looking for. That's the vibe. That's the energy.
And think about it. So here's all of the positive. 2 shows ago, we went to that show, and you remember the last 2 matches, I made the comment, that felt like a little bit of the vibe of AWE was back.
Right.
And that was in full force last night, where we were like, okay, they are back. That is the energy, the persona, the vibe, whatever you want to call it. That's what they want to be. And like I said, they want to be them. They need to be them. They need to do what they do, and they need to. They're going to draw the crowd. And for all of the right reasons that they want to do it, 100%. Now let's get AWE back, drawing the larger crowds, and I think that's Cerner's, because they've kind of built. Because I think that was the obstacle from day one, is like, can we get from Southern States back to AWE? Mission accomplished. So that's the positive. That is all of the positive. They are back, and they have the vibe of who they are and what they want to be. Now, the next challenge is grow.
Yes.
And move forward.
Yes, the next now you got to do that every month. That's what you got to do
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
You got to do this. I don't know how many times they're planning on running in 2025, but 11, 12. That's the challenge
Correct.
now. And the challenge to that is we just saw the promotion that the wrestlers in Georgia thought did it better than anybody else the last 2 years did not make it through a year. That's the challenge. It is a grind. This is hard. This is, this is not, everybody says we're wrestling for everybody. It's not for everybody. I mean, it's for everybody to watch, but it ain't for everybody to do because it takes special people to put in that grind. And listen, they got all the momentum in the world. It feels like everybody feels like a lot of people are ending this year with a lot of momentum, and maybe that's a good time to move into bringing it back. It is the Power Five. This is the five wrestlers, promoters, promotions who are heading into 2025, like we said, with all the momentum, with targets on their backs. These are in no particular order. Let's start out with number 5, though. I mean, they're just numbered. They're not. This is one you and I talked about. You have somebody. You've had a team running a promotion, booker and promoter working together very well. 3-time promotion of the year. But now, as we enter 2025, all the weight, all the burden, all the responsibility is squarely on Dylan Freymeyer's shoulders to carry Southern Honor Wrestling throughout 2025.
Has we this is kind of the comment, I think I made it. Has quietly, because he's not a big guy. He doesn't go out there and he doesn't talk.
Yes.
And put himself over and like try to reach, whatever. Has Dylan Freimeyer with Gary Lamb walking away from Southern Honor at this point? It's all on Dylan's shoulders, like you said. Has quietly Dylan Freimeyer become one of the most important, I don't want to use the word powerful, but like the most important people in Georgia, independent wrestling, because without a doubt, Southern Honor still right there at the top of the list when it comes to promotions in Georgia. Some people, depending on what you're looking at and whatever metrics you like to use, they're the top or the top 3 or the top 2, whatever. And now it's solely on his shoulders. Gary Lamb's not there. This is not a disrespectful thing to Gary, but it's like Dylan, Gary was always front and center. The spotlight was on Gary. Dylan got to do his thing behind the scenes or whatever. Well, now it's just it's all Dylan's responsibility.
Right.
So that's crazy to think that quietly now with Gary out of the way, one of the top 3 promotions, it's solely on Dylan. So my answer is, I think he is.
And Dylan has gone from knowing that the first 10 to 30 minutes of a show, he's had Gary go out there. Gary, who, the unofficial mayor of Canton, Georgia, to get everybody fired up, to get everybody ready. And that's not there anymore. The Gary who's been the trash talking, pot stirring guy on social media against basically it was Gary against the world. Gary brought that certain energy. Can Dylan not bring that same kind of energy because everybody's different, but what is Dylan going to do to kind of fill that void, not just on the card, but behind the scenes and on the promotional side?
Right. Listen, luckily, by the way, we've learned this past week that just because he's gone from Southern Honor doesn't mean he's gone from social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, luckily we haven't lost Gary completely. Like, he's still the social media, and even in the wrestling world, he's in there. But he's out of Southern Honor, but he's not out of the, he's still going to stir the pot occasionally when he's got some free time on his hands.
Yes, and he's getting ready for the big return of Elevate Fight League in 2025, which is going to be tremendous. Next, number 4, Scott Barnett and Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. You just saw Scott on This or That. He is a guy, he's not in front of the camera, he is behind the scenes. I would say in 2024 and 2025, he's booking more venues. They're running more shows. And now he's going to have a little more responsibility with what actually happens on the shows. And so Scott's just a super great guy.
Yeah.
And great to work with. And we're looking forward to going to a lot more turnbuckle shows this year.
1,000%. And while we're talking about Scott Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, I'm not ready to throw the other names, I guess, out there yet. And I don't even know if we should. But the other cool thing, I haven't even told you this. So AEW Collision, Athens, Georgia. It's the Aikens Ford Center, I think is what they call it now. They're going to be there January the 11th. You know why I'm excited? Why are you mentioning this on the Indie Talk, Nick? Because we talk about AEW at the beginning a little bit, but 2, and I should have said it there, but I wanted to make sure. From my understanding, there's going to be a Turnbuckle Showcase match at that event.
Oh my!
So, if you're a Turnbuckle supporter, follower, absolutely get your tickets for Collision in Athens. It's right in their backyard. They run South Main Brewing. Yes. They're just outside of Athens and Watkinsville. I believe they're even going to get a shout out at the Collision maybe. But they're supposed to get a showcase match there. So show your support. Go out to check out Collision as well, and be loud for whoever that showcase match ends up being. But yeah, so January the 11th, they're going to be there. And of course, they're coming back January 10th, the night before. So if you're a Turnbuckle fan, check them out. At Tannery Road, they're going to have the Iron Savages in town because Collision's the next night in Athens. So that makes some sense. But yeah, you brought it up. It's the number of locations they're running, just the number of shows, the volume. I don't know what that total number is going to be, but I made the comment to somebody. I don't know that anybody's going to put on more shows than them in 2025.
No, they've already got second and third Fridays are booked. So that's 20 every month. That's 24 shows. We know of 8 other shows.
No, they've actually got, I think, Scott's going to kill me because I can't remember. The Watkinsville's like the third Monday or something. It's one of the Mondays. So they've actually got 3 booked every week. So there's 36 shows minimum.
Yeah, and then plus the 8 paid shows. So that's 44. They will definitely end up with more shows than even SCA, who runs every week.
Correct. That's why they're in the Power 5.
That's why they're in the Power 5. And I believe more than likely they're going to be in heavy conversation a year from now for promotion of the year.
And I would argue, why are they not in it this year? But that's a whole different conversation, right?
Right. One promotion that is in the conversation for promotion of the year this year is number 3, and that is Southern Fried Championship Wrestling, who's had a great year, great feuds, and ending quite literally on maybe the hottest note possible, as you mentioned about their show.
Southern Fried is always going to be, as long as they've got, we always talk about the strength of a promotion because of the leadership. How, we had this whole conversation, we're not going to go down it again, but we had this conversation about why leadership matters in promotions. This is one of those where they show it. It's like the proof's in the pudding. David Manders, when he makes a decision, and it's final, boom, and he moves on, right? That's a strong promoter, owner, whatever you want to call it. Todd does what he does best. He kind of over here to the side. They're like, hey, you do this, tell those stories and do it better. Todd is very old school. He loves to tell stories, and it's not just about a match.
Mm-hmm.
The match quality matters, but if the people don't care, then it doesn't matter. That's a
right.
big thing. Todd is a very good at, playing the emotional violin or whatever you want to call it. Like, that's what he does. And that's why, for me, as long as those two, if they're in tandem there, they will always be in the mix for one of the top 1, 2, 3, call it whatever you want to, argument for promotions in Georgia.
Yeah. Is this a good time to say this? And I'm not really sure how to say it, but that over the course of the next weeks and months, that we will probably talk a little bit more about the Georgia Wrestling History Awards moving
Oh,
forward.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And I think that's good. I think that's good for Georgia wrestling. We've had some great conversation with Larry Goodman, and it was great to see him at the show last night. And I'm excited for Georgia wrestling in 2025, and I think some good things are happening.
Power of conversation is a beautiful thing, guys. You can patch up a lot of things, and that's all. We'll leave it at that, right? It's fine.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of somebody who just finishing on a hot note, number 2, Alexander Lev, somebody who, I mean, the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I'd say he's had the best last 6, 7 weeks of anybody in Georgia.
Look, I know a lot of people are going to push back. He, at Southern Fried, he did lose that Heritage Championship. I mean, dude, he was in like a 7-man scramble.
Correct.
It's one of those things. It's, the odds are against you from jump if there's that many people in there.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean, but he won it. He won it right after Thanksgiving. I think the reason Lev's in here is we are kind of acknowledging multiple pieces to his career here. When it's the involvement at Viral, the involvement he's at New Legacy. I'm sorry, I'm having to literally process that. He had
New Legacy champion.
Yeah, he's at obviously AWE last night. He's First Blood. He steals a win there, but it's a win's a win. He's obviously the pro wrestling, the new promotion there in the Royce. It's his promote. So like there's just he's a main. He's the number 1 contender for the Southern Honor. I've almost forgot, right?
He's going to get a shot at Joe Black here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so there's a reason why it's talent, it's promoter, it's all the above. Like, he's on a heck of a run. You have to give him his credit.
He was in the main event at the show of the year, a card on which Trevor Lee was on. Trevor Lee's on that card. Alexander Lev was in the main event in a First Blood match. Like, that's kind of all you need. It doesn't get any bigger than that, I don't think.
And then, like you said, in a couple of weeks, he'll be, I'm guessing, main eventing versus Joe Black at Southern Honor. And he's taking on, I believe, Thomas Latimer at the debut January 25th. He's against the NWA World Champion. Come on, guys. I get some of those matches are happening in 2025,
right?
But all pieces were set up in 2024, to get to there. So that's kind of our point.
And finally, speaking of a guy who, could you say he had a bad month? And that's Matt Griffin in Action Wrestling. He had a bad month in the sense of his longtime friend and partner, Dylan Hales, kind of turning on him in the promotion. Then he may have won the death match, but he ended up with a plunger on his head. But Matt Griffin was everywhere in 2024.
Yeah, he's just involved in so many places. So many, it's like, oh, his partner turned. I would turn around though and say, but it's one of the hottest, if not the hottest story in Georgia.
Yes.
How about this? By the way, not just Georgia. That story, escapes outside the bounds, of the Georgia, borders. It's a Tennessee, it's a Southeast, it's an IWTV situation. So even though you're like, hey, he's not in a good side of it to start with, it's one of the hottest stories, and like you said, just in independent wrestling, period. And then he's involved in the Gunnar Miller story at Southern Honor.
Yes.
He's obviously in the Blood and Honey series. He got knocked out at Thanksgiving. Thank you, David Manders, at Southern Fried. So, but he's at least, he's sticking his nose in over there. He's a little bit everywhere. And look, and then I'm not going to give him any credit for that. No, I was going to give him some love, but look, I just think the positive part, like at the end of yes, Matt Griffin wants wrestling to be better. Maybe his method of trying to make Georgia wrestling better could be thing now. But look, he now believes he is the kingpin of Georgia wrestling.
Yes.
If you're a Daredevil fan, you kind of know what that means. Sometimes it might be good intentions, just a very bad delivery system. Sometimes it's the way the execution of your ideas and your dreams may not be the best way to do it.
While we can question his methods, we cannot question his impact and influence on wrestling here in 2024. And that's why, I would say if as I look back over the last 12 months, Matt Griffin, I think he's been on every Power 5 that we've ever done.
That's possible, and listen, and by the way, obviously with the new format, I think it allows us to get back to those, the underappreciated, the Power 5,
hot hand,
the hot hand, all of those. Yeah, I think we got a shot at we can do those every single week now, and that'll keep it more consistent. But you may be right. I would be hard pressed to argue that he's not on every Power 5 we did. Everyone we did. I don't know how many we did, but everyone we've done. You're correct. He's probably been on them.
Yeah. Remember, fans, when we started the show, it was every 2 weeks, and it was like, we're gonna have to do this every week because there's so much to cover. And matter of fact, there's so much to cover. We're having to do 2 shows now. So you're watching this on YouTube, or you might be watching it on Patreon. But if you're looking for the show where we do the Indy Rewind and making the drives, we're calling it the 5-Star Indy Guide. You're going to have to go over to patreon.com/tappedoutpod, set up a free account, costs you absolutely nothing. And that's where you can get that show each and every week moving forward. It'll be right there on Patreon. This show every week will be on YouTube, which you can get to at tappedoutpod.com. There's never been a better time to become a patron. Again, you set up a free account, you're going to get at least a free show every week. You're going to get Phil Stamper's calendar, but we are putting up more and more. We're going to start putting up more free content on Patreon, plus all the paid content, plus the new things. There's never been a better time.
Yeah, and I think one of the logics, and I didn't want to explain it like before we get out of here, it'd still take 30 seconds. Part of the reason why I think the Patreon, like people are going to ask why we do with Patreon, is because the absolute unpredictable nature of how long that show will be. This week's probably won't be that long. There were 4 shows here, 5, 4, but then there's shows where we're recapping 11 shows, and there's 9 shows, so it's 20 shows. That thing might be an hour and a half. So that's kind of why we thought Patreon was a good fit, because then if you want it, you'll look it out and go find it. But look, our big tell is, look, if you are a Patreon member, tell everybody. Like, sign up and get that free membership. Again, it's going to be a free show. There's a lot of free content, and we're going to make a commitment to try to get some more stuff out there. And that's just, I just think and look, we may surprise people. If you've got a free membership, occasionally maybe we gift out memberships. Mm-hmm. Maybe we run specials for free members. They can get a deal where they can get a free or a discount on their first month or something, not to try it out or something like that. It's the other advantage of having a free membership, that I think that'll be a huge thing for people. So we're hoping you join and check it out.
Yeah, I mean, we even talked a little bit last night about more written content that would be available on Patreon. There's so many things you can do. It's been a great platform. But fans, we do it all for you, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching wherever you're watching or listening. We couldn't do it without you. We're so grateful for your encouragement and support. And hey, if you're like just waiting for more, just head over to Patreon right now, because we're getting ready to record the 5-Star Indie Guide. But for this week's Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast, for Nick McDaniel, this is Heath Mulligan. Thanks for watching, and we will see you at the matches.